The independent miners' hall hummed with its usual cacophony of voices, the massive space filled with the sound of a dozen different species, trying to make themselves heard over each other. Reese watched a Zentaran gesticulating with 4 of its arms while using the other 2 to manipulate a holographic display of an asteroid field. The alien's crystalline voice carried across the converted cargo bay, mixing with the deeper tones of the Valaxians at the next station and the clicking speech of a group of Meridians by the entrance. "Stop stalling," Ul muttered, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. The ex-Marine never could stay still during these meetings. Too many people, too many angles to watch. "Biggs has been free for 10 minutes. Reese nodded but didn't move. The data chip felt warm in his palm, though he knew that was impossible. He'd checked and rechecked their findings before bringing them here. Still, timing was everything in the claims hall. Go too early, and the bigger operations would try to muscle in. Too late, and the good slots would be taken, leaving them with second-tier buyers and lower offers. "The Meridians are leaving," Rhonda said without looking up from her tablet. Her fingers danced across the surface, making last-minute adjustments to their presentation. "That's our window." Reese straightened his worn jacket, more habit than necessity, and led his team toward French Biggs's station. The Stellar Mining Corp's coordinator was just finishing up with a solo prospector, shaking his head at whatever the grizzled spacer had tried to sell him. "Biggs," Reese said, timing his arrival perfectly as the rejected prospector shuffled away. "We got something that might interest you." Biggs looked up, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. The man had lost the original to a pressure breach years ago, but the replacement was top of the line, capable of analyzing mineral compositions on site. It was one of the reasons Stellar Mining kept him on despite his tendency to lowball offers. "Reese." Biggs's organic eye crinkled with genuine warmth. "Been a while. Heard you were poking around the outer drift. Find anything worth my time?" Instead of answering, Reese placed the data chip on the station's reader. Rhonda stepped forward, tapping her tablet to sync with the holographic display. The air above them filled with a 3-dimensional map of an asteroid field, each rock color coded based on mineral composition. Sector 2247, approximately 6 light days from the cloud's outer boundary. Rhonda began, but Biggs raised his hand. "Hold up." His cybernetic eye was spinning rapidly now, processing the data. "These readings, they can't be right. The neodymium concentrations alone, they're right," Al said, his voice carrying just enough edge to draw the attention of nearby miners. "Triple-checked them myself." The gathering crowd was exactly what Reese had been waiting for. He'd learned long ago that the best deals happened with witnesses. It kept everyone honest, or at least as honest as anyone got in the cloud. "The field contains 47 major asteroids and approximately 200 smaller bodies," Rhonda continued, highlighting specific clusters. "Initial scans show rare Earth concentrations averaging 18% higher than any currently active mining operation in the cloud. The neodymium deposits alone would cover Stellar's contracts with the drive manufacturers for the next 2 years." Biggs's organic eye widened slightly, the only tell he ever showed during negotiations. "And you're bringing this to us because you've got the equipment to extract it properly," Reese said, keeping his voice level. "Because you've dealt fairly with us before, and because we know you can pay what it's worth." A Valaxian mining team had drifted closer, their environmental suits humming softly. Biggs noticed them too. If he didn't make an offer soon, this could turn into an auction. 10% of extraction value, Biggs said, plus standard finder's fee. Reese heard Al snort behind him. Even Biggs didn't seem to believe his own offer. 40%, Rhonda countered, with guaranteed first rights on any additional deposits we find in the sector. 15%, and I'll throw in priority fuel access at Stellar's depot for the next 6 months. 35%, Reese said. "The fuel access. And we want it in writing that our chain of discovery is logged with station authority before any equipment moves in." Biggs's cybernetic eye finally stopped spinning. He looked at the gathered crowd, then back at the holographic display. 25%, the fuel access, full documentation, and I'll add in priority maintenance slots for your ship at our base for the next year. Reese pretended to consider it, though this was almost exactly what he'd hoped for. The maintenance slots alone were worth a small fortune out here where qualified mechanics were rarer than honest politicians. "Done," he said, extending his hand. "Send the contract to Rhonda for review, and we'll sign once she's checked the language." As Biggs began preparing the documentation, Reese caught snippets of conversation from the dispersing crowd. Words like richest find this year and biggest haul since the Meridian strike floated through the air. Perfect. By tonight, every prospector in the station would be heading for the outer drift, leaving their real target. The quiet, blissfully undisturbed. Sometimes the best way to keep a secret in the cloud was to give people something else to chase. Drink to celebrate. Al asked as they left Biggs's station. After Rhonda checks the contract, Reese said, "Last time we celebrated early, we missed a clause about salvage rights that cost us a fortune in legal fees." "That was one time," Rhonda protested, but she was already buried in the contract text. As they made their way toward the hall's exit, Reese caught a glimpse of their reflection in a burnished hull plate that served as wall paneling. The three of them, unlikely as it seemed, had become one of the most successful discovery teams in the cloud. Not that they advertised that fact. Out here, success drew the wrong kind of attention. The real test would come soon enough. The quiet was waiting, and unlike this asteroid field, they had no idea what they'd find there. But that was tomorrow's problem. For now, they had a contract to review and a deal to close. Just another day in the cloud where nothing was ever quite what it seemed, and the biggest discoveries always came with the highest risks. "Warning, gravity fluctuation zone ahead," scrolled across the digital display in 7 different languages. Below it, someone had scrawled in permanent marker, "Don't be a hero, use the handles." Reese grabbed one of the hanging straps as they entered the gravity drop, his body immediately feeling lighter. The corridor ahead stretched for 50 meters, its walls lined with handholds and safety straps. Years ago, this had been part of a luxury passenger liner, its artificial gravity systems top of the line. Now, after being salvaged and grafted onto Redford 1, those same systems created the station's most notorious thoroughfare. "Incoming." Al called out, just as a young Meridian lost their grip. The insectoid alien tumbled through the air, chittering in alarm. With practiced ease, Al reached out and snagged one of their 4 legs, guiding them toward a handhold. "First time?" he asked, though the answer was obvious from the way the alien's antennae were twitching. "Yes, thank you," the Meridian clicked. "I was told there was no other way to reach the Market District." "There's always maintenance Route 7, Rhonda said, gliding past them with the grace of someone who traversed this section thousands of times. "But it adds 30 minutes to the trip and smells like recycled protein paste." They helped the Meridian navigate the rest of the gravity drop, Al sharing stories about worse mishaps he'd seen. Last month, a Balaxian trader tried to carry an unsecured crate through here. Now half their inventory is stuck to the ceiling, and station maintenance wants them to pay for removal. As they exited the 0G zone, Reese felt the familiar weight return to his limbs. The Market District sprawled before them, a maze of corridors and repurposed chambers filled with everything from legitimate businesses to questionable enterprises that changed names weekly. Well, if it isn't the Walking Dead themselves. The voice belonged to Jack Yang, a prospector who'd vanished 3 years ago during a routine survey mission. He'd reappeared last week at Bay 147, his ship's logs showing only 18 hours had passed for him. Now he waved at them from behind the counter of a makeshift shop selling salvaged nav equipment. "Jack," Reese nodded, carefully avoiding any questions about where the man had been. In the cloud, returning from the presumed dead was common enough that most people had learned not to probe too deeply. Those who did often heard things they wished they hadn't. "Heard you made quite a splash at claims," Jack said, buffing a cracked navigation display. "Found something shiny out in the drift." "Nothing special," Al shrugged, but his hand drifted to the pocket holding the signed contract. "Just paying the bills." They moved on before Jack could ask more questions, weaving through the crowds. The Market District assaulted the senses, the sharp tang of alien spices mixing with the metallic taste of recycled air, holographic advertisements competing with old-fashioned painted signs, and the constant background hum of 1,000 private conversations. "We need to resupply," Rhonda said, checking her tablet. "The sensors we ordered came in at Tech's place, and we should grab some more emergency rations. The good ones this time, not those surplus military packs Al keeps insisting are authentic." "Those are authentic," Al protested. "Authentically terrible, just like real military food." They turned down a side corridor, this one made from an old cargo container. The walls were lined with small shops, each specializing in some esoteric piece of space travel necessity. Tech's shop was near the end, marked by a holographic sign that flickered between different technical schematics. The owner, A human woman so heavily augmented she was more machine than flesh, barely looked up as they entered. Back wall, third shelf, under the sign that says reserved, do not touch. How did you? Al started. Because I'm good at my job, Tech interrupted, her cybernetic eyes continuing to focus on the circuit board she was soldering. And because you three are the only ones crazy enough to need quantum-shielded sensors this far out in the cloud. Reese retrieved their order while Rhonda handled payment. The sensors were expensive, but if they were going to have any chance of penetrating the Quiet's interference, they'd need the best equipment available. As they left Tech's shop, a commotion near the main thoroughfare drew their attention. A crowd had gathered around a public news terminal, watching a report about another missing ship. The footage showed a familiar sector of space, uncomfortably close to their intended destination. That's the third one this month, someone in the crowd muttered. Fourth, another voice corrected. They're not reporting the solo prospector who disappeared last week. Reese exchanged glances with his team. They'd known the Quiet was becoming more active, but 4 ships in 1 month was unprecedented. Maybe we should. Al began. No, Reese cut him off. We've got the best sensors available, better shielding than any of those ships, and more experience with cloud anomalies than most teams combined. Besides, he lowered his voice, if something out there is taking ships, don't you want to know why? I hate it when you make sense. Al grumbled. Fine, but we're stopping at the last stop first. If we're going to do something this crazy, I need a drink. As they headed for the bar, Reese noticed how the crowd around the news terminal had already begun to disperse, their attention drawn to the next distraction. That was life in the cloud. Danger was so common that even missing ships barely registered as news anymore. But something about these disappearances felt different. The pattern was too precise, too deliberate. And tomorrow they'd find out why, or join the growing list of the cloud's mysteries themselves. The last stop hadn't changed since it was first cobbled together from 3 different ship galleys. The bar's mismatched walls still bore the original manufacturer's stamps, and the ventilation still cycled between too cold and too warm every 17 minutes. Their usual booth, marked with a scratched silhouette of the second chance, waited empty, as it always did. Nobody in the last stop was stupid enough to sit in a claimed booth. Kex emerged from behind the bar as they approached, all 6 arms moving in fluid coordination. The Zentaran carried their usual drinks, synthetic whiskey for Reese, genuine Terran beer for Al, at double the price, and carbonated fungi juice for Rhonda. You're later than usual. Kex noted, the translator at his throat converting clicking sounds into smooth basic. Claims hall must have been interesting. Just business as usual, Reese said, sliding into the booth. The synthetic leather creaked beneath him, a sound as familiar as his own ship's engine. Business as usual doesn't make half the prospectors in the station start planning trips to the outer drift, Kex countered, setting their drinks down with 4 hands, while the other 2 adjusted the booth's privacy field. The background noise dimmed as the field engaged. Rhonda waited until Kex had moved away before activating her tablet's holographic display. The image that formed above their drinks showed a sphere of empty space, approximately 50 kilometers in diameter. To the naked eye, it looked like any other section of the cloud, but the sensor readings told a different story. That's the Quiet. Al asked, though he already knew the answer. They'd been planning this for months. 3 months of combined sensor data, Rhonda confirmed. Look at the electromagnetic patterns. She overlaid a new dataset, causing lines of energy to appear, weaving through the sphere like a web. They're not random. These patterns match artifacts we've recovered from at least 2 different ancient sites. Which sites? Reese asked, leaning forward. The Meridian Strike and the Volaxian Ruins. Rhonda manipulated the display, bringing up comparison data. Both sites contained technology we still can't fully understand, and both had similar energy signatures on a much smaller scale. Al took a long drink of his beer before speaking. I've been talking to some old military contacts. There are rumors about defense systems out here, left over from wars so old even the Meridians don't remember them. The way ships disappear in the Quiet, total systems failure, no distress calls, it fits the pattern of ancient containment fields we found in the Volaxian ruins. But the Volaxian site was tiny compared to this, Rhonda said. The power required to maintain a field this size would be massive, Reese finished. Unless what? Al prompted. Unless it's not actually a field at all. Reese reached into the hologram, adjusting the view. What if we're thinking about this wrong? Everyone assumes the Quiet is some kind of barrier or defense system because nothing can get through it. But what if it's not keeping things out? You think it's keeping something in? Rhonda's fingers flew across her tablet, running new analyses. Or hiding something, Al added. The cloud's full of things people wanted to hide. Why not ancient aliens too? The privacy field rippled as Kex approached with fresh drinks. The Zentaran set them down without comment, but his eye stalks were focused on their holographic display longer than necessary. We're not the first to try this, Rhonda said after Kex had left. Better-equipped teams have tried to penetrate the quiet. Different approaches, different technologies, they all failed. They didn't have your sensor data, Reese pointed out. Or Al's military intel. Or those quantum-shielded sensors we just picked up from tech. Or your luck, Al added with a grim smile. We'll need that too. Rhonda deactivated the hologram, but not before they all saw the latest overlay, the paths of ships that had disappeared in the past month. The pattern was unmistakable now. Each ship had vanished at a precise distance from the sphere's center, forming a perfect geometric pattern. Whatever's in there, she said, it's getting more active. The disappearances aren't random anymore. It's like it's searching for something, Reese finished. Or someone. They sat in silence for a moment, each contemplating what that might mean. Around them, the last stop continued its eternal cycle of traders, prospectors, and explorers drinking away their successes or failures. How many of them had sat in this same booth, planning expeditions into the unknown parts of the cloud? How many had never returned? We leave tomorrow, Al finally asked. Reese nodded. First shift. The sooner we move, the less chance of someone else getting curious about why we're really out here. I'll start the pre-launch checks, Rhonda said, finishing her drink. We'll want to calibrate those new sensors before we get anywhere near the quiet. As they stood to leave, Reese noticed Kex watching them from the bar. The Zentaran's eye stalks were arranged in a pattern that, in his species, indicated deep concern. He'd seen that look before, usually right before someone told him he was about to make a terrible mistake. But that was the thing about the cloud. Sometimes the worst mistakes led to the biggest discoveries. And tomorrow they'd either make the discovery of a lifetime or become just another cloud mystery for others to solve. Either way, they'd find out what the quiet was hiding. The only question was whether they'd live to tell anyone about it. The second chance looked like she'd been assembled from spare parts, because she had been. Her hull was a patchwork of different materials, each section chosen for specific properties rather than aesthetics. The forward section came from a Meridian scout ship, its sensor-transparent hull perfect for their specialized equipment. The living quarters were salvaged from a luxury yacht, offering more comfort than most explorer vessels. The engine room was pure military surplus, courtesy of Al's connections and Rhonda's ability to make incompatible systems work together. Stop worrying about the sensors, Reese called down to Rhonda, who was neck-deep in an access panel. They'll work or they won't. Either way, checking them again won't change anything. Says the man who triple-checks the nav systems before every launch, she replied, but her tools were already being packed away. Al's got dinner ready anyway. Whatever it is, it smells better than his usual attempts at cooking. They made their way to the common area, where Al stood stirring a large pot of what he claimed was authentic chicken stew. The smell filled the small space, almost masking the ever-present metallic tang of recycled air. You know that's not real chicken, Rhonda said, taking her usual seat at the small table. Real chicken hasn't existed outside of Earth for 2 centuries. It's the seasoning that makes it authentic. Al insisted, ladling the synthetic protein stew into bowls. My great-grandmother's recipe. She actually cooked real chicken, back when there were still farms on Mars. You've never been to Mars, Reese pointed out, accepting a bowl. No, but my great-grandmother was. Before the collapse. She passed the recipe down. Said good food was worth remembering, even if you couldn't get the original ingredients anymore. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts about tomorrow's mission. The quiet was interrupted by a soft chime from the communications panel. Message from Biggs, Rhonda reported, checking the display. Another ship just went missing near the quiet. The Never Dawn. Crew of 5. Never Dawn. I'll set his spoon down. That's French Biggs's brother's ship. Which is why he's warning us, Reese said. He thinks we're heading to the outer drift, but he's still looking out for fellow explorers. Should we tell him? Rhonda asked. About where we're really going? Reese considered it for a moment. No. The fewer people who know, the better. Besides, if we don't make it back, it's better if everyone thinks we disappeared looking for mineral deposits. Keeps the attention away from the quiet. Always the optimist, Al muttered, but he was already clearing the dishes away. We should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting one way or another. They followed the familiar routine of securing the ship for night cycle. Rhonda ran one final systems check while Al secured the airlocks and Reese reviewed their planned approach vector. It was all unnecessary. They'd checked everything multiple times already, but routines were comforting the night before a dangerous mission. The second chance's night cycle brought a different kind of quiet than they'd face tomorrow. The ship's systems hummed at their lowest settings, creating a soft lullaby familiar to anyone who spent their life in space. Through the viewports, Redford 1's lights twinkled against the cloud's swirling backdrop. Tomorrow, those lights would disappear behind them as they ventured into one of the cloud's oldest mysteries. Al said as they prepared to retire to their quarters, "My old commander used to say that the night before a mission was sacred. Said it was the universe giving you one last chance to appreciate being alive. Your old commander was the one you left behind when you went AWOL," Rhonda pointed out. "Yeah, well, even paranoid bastards can be right sometimes." Al shrugged. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we either make history or become history." "We're not going to become history," Reese said firmly. "We're going to solve a mystery." The clouds kept the quiet secrets long enough. As they headed to their separate quarters, Reese paused in the corridor. Through the viewport, he could just make out the section of space where the quiet waited. To the naked eye, it looked like any other part of the cloud, beautiful, mysterious, and deadly. Tomorrow they'd discover which of those qualities would define their mission. The second chance's night cycle dimmed the lights to their lowest setting, casting the corridor in a soft blue glow. In their quarters, his team was settling in for their last night of normal sleep before everything changed. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but tonight was for rest, reflection, and the quiet comfort of a ship that had become home. Reese took one last look at the swirling colors of the cloud before retiring to his quarters. Out there, something ancient was stirring, its patterns becoming more deliberate, its purpose still unknown. Tomorrow they'd face it with their usual mix of preparation, skill, and barely controlled recklessness. But tonight they slept aboard their ship, following an old spacer's tradition for luck. In the cloud, you took your luck where you could find it, and hoped it would be enough to bring you home again. "Pre-flight check complete," Rhonda announced as the first shift lights began brightening across Redford 1. "All systems nominal, including our new sensors." I'll secured the last of their supplies, double-checking the emergency gear. Search and rescue equipment stowed, though I'm still not sure who we'd be rescuing out there besides ourselves. "Status report from station control," Reese said from the pilot's seat, his hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. "We've got clearance for Launch Bay 17. They're listing our destination as the Outer Drift." Through the viewport, they could see maintenance crews scurrying to clear the bay. A few early shift workers paused to watch their preparations. The second chance's distinctive patchwork hull was well known among the station's residents. "Message from Biggs," Rhonda reported. "Just 2 words, be careful. He's worried about his brother," Al said, strapping into his station. "He should be," Reese replied, initiating the launch sequence. "But if we're right about the quiet, we might find answers for a lot of missing ships, not just the Never Dawn." The second chance's engines hummed to life, their unique tone a result of Rhonda's unconventional modifications. Outside, the launch bay's massive doors began to part, revealing the swirling colors of the cloud beyond. "Last chance to back out," Reese offered, though he already knew the answer. Rhonda's fingers danced across her console, bringing their special sensors online. "And miss the discovery of a lifetime? Not a chance. Besides," Al added with a grim smile, "someone's got to be crazy enough to try the impossible. Might as well be us." The launch bay doors finished their cycle. Ahead of them, the cloud beckoned with its eternal mysteries. Somewhere out there, the quiet waited, its secrets preserved for centuries until this moment. Reese engaged the main drive. "Second chance to control. We are go for launch." Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave it a like and to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Feel free to comment and share it as well. With all that said, go on and check out the video in the top left. I think you might like it.